general manager. This is the first time set aside for public comment. Do we have any public comment?
Committee members, Tammy McMahon, for the record, there are no public comments.
Thank you. Steve?
I think probably item 1 to approve the agenda with deletion of the item.
Oh, okay. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda with the deletion of any items? We have a motion on the floor. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Say nay. And that motion carries.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and read some stuff into the record just for the purposes of the open meeting law. I just wanted to remind everyone as we go through the agenda that we request any committee members wishing to make a comment, ask a question, or make a motion that you say your name for the record. Also, after a motion is made and calls for a vote, each committee member will verbally vote. If the votes are all in favor of the motion, the unanimous vote will be noted and we'll move on to the next item. If there are any nay votes or abstentions, a roll call will be initiated to count the record of the vote. On March 22nd, 2020, the State of Nevada Executive Department declared Emergency Directive 006, which suspends the requirement contained in NRS that there be a physical location designated for meetings of public bodies where the public community can participate. Directive 006 has been extended by subsequent directives until an end of the emergency directive end of the emergency is declared. In addition, Governor Sisolak made recommendations to reduce the spread of COVID-19 on November 10, 2020. Directives and recommendations of physical location for public meeting not been provided. The meeting is being live streamed and is available for view through the website listed on the public. So we went ahead and we already completed the call to order and also the approval of the agenda. So we've also done the public comments. So I think we can move on to item 2, which is evaluate the performance of Stephen C. Parrish, the Regional Flood Control District General Manager for calendar year 2020, set goals and objectives for calendar year 2021. Recommend as a district board of directors an adjustment to the compensation and acceptance of a waiver and the cost of living adjustment from the general manager or take action as appropriate. Whoa, that's a lot. I just wanted to start by thanking the 3 of you for volunteering to sit on this committee. It really means a lot to myself and to the staff here at the Flood Control District to hear back from the board of directors and understand where you think we ought to be in terms of the Flood Control District. So I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to help and sit in on this committee. Appreciate it. I put together a PowerPoint presentation since we're on virtual, and I wanted to just run through that. I'll go through pretty quickly and just touch on some of the major accomplishments that we've had over the last year. And feel free to stop me at any time if you have any questions or want some clarification. I'll try to go through it pretty quick in the interest of time, but and by no means this is every achievement that we had over 2020. This is just one of the ones that we've experienced. So if that's acceptable, I'll go ahead and get started on the presentation.
Yes, please go ahead, Steve.
Okay, thank you. So I'll start with the 2020 challenges. Every agency across the country and really around the world have experienced the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic on operations. We too had to go through that, and we had to quickly adjust our operations to have our employees be safe, from the COVID impact. Quickly instituted a work from home policy. We had to implement some technology relatively quickly so that could be accomplished, but we did that in relatively short order, and we really had very little disruption from the flood control. We were able to utilize VPN and other technology to be able to have our employees, for the most part, work from home. About 80% or so of our employees are working from home right now. And that is working pretty well. As you all probably know, when the governor issued his stay-at-home orders, he exempted construction from that. He considered construction an essential service, so we had to continue paying our contractors and making sure that design reports and everything was good process. We continued to do that. We added our ability to digitally sign documents. We switched to electronic submittals, all of that in an effort to accommodate our stakeholders that utilize the flood control district. And as you all know, we had to quickly revise all of our public meetings to a virtual platform. The board meeting as well as our committee meetings that are all open had to switch to virtual platform. We worked closely with RTC as we did on this meeting that we're in right now to try to make that as seamless and as easy as possible for all of the different agencies. And I thank RTC for all of those efforts. In addition to that, we had to, right when the closures were occurring in March of 2020, that was right when we were setting the resources for our budget for FY21. And so we had to kind of switch, work closely with our financial advisors and try to come up as quick as we could with what kind of impacts we were going to expect to our resources because of the shutdowns in March. We were able to do that. The estimates were pretty dire in the beginning, but we were able to revise those some as we moved into the fiscal year. So although the resources have dropped, I would say that we're not as bad as it could have been. And I'll go through some of those here in a minute. We also implemented as a savings measure a temporary reduced work week for our employees. So they started working a 38-hour instead of a 40-hour week, which saved about, say, 5% on salary expenses. And we also quickly adjusted expenditures where we could to minimize expenses to reduce the impact of the reduction. So we were able to save about $1.2 million off of our operating budget, which is about 10% or so of operating. So that was all good. Any questions? Area, which is another master plan that we do. It'll be the next one that's up. And then we're going to start planning this year for the Las Vegas Valley master plan update, which is a huge undertaking. As you may expect, that is the largest master plan that we have to do for the Las Vegas Valley. It generally takes us about 18 months to 2 years to get that done. So we have to start planning for it and getting ready to start it. It's not due till 2023, but we'll begin the process of updating that document. I should point out that the 2020 master plan for the Muddy River and tributaries washes, we did actually using in-house staff as opposed to hiring a consultant. We saved probably about $200,000 by doing that, not hiring a consultant and just doing that using in-house labor. We plan on the next update in 5 years to go ahead and hire a consultant and we do a full just look at all the soils and all the information, that master plan with that update. The next key service area is our capital improvement program. This is kind of the bread and butter of the Regional Flood Control District. This is why we're in business, is to get these facilities designed and constructed and operating and protecting our county. To that end, we currently have 77 open interlocal contracts for either design or construction of different facilities, with a total value of about $491 million. To date, we've spent about $294 million of that $491 million. So those contracts are all in process now, and we're working through getting those projects designed and getting them constructed. We currently have 5 projects totaling about $65 million that are under construction as we speak. We have another 9 projects totaling about $97 million that have been funded by the board and should start construction in the next 2 to 3 months. So we're going to be really busy on the construction side of the house as we go into the next calendar year. And then 6 projects totaling $48.2 million last fiscal year. Another important point is that we did issue a $94 million new money bond in October of 2020. I'll talk a little bit about that on another slide, but that money is available for projects if they come in for construction funding. We're anticipating 7 projects will complete design relatively soon and will be coming over the next 3 to 6 months. The next key service area is our maintenance work program. We want to make sure that we provide adequate funding for all of our facilities to be well maintained and operational throughout their life. To that end, about $10 million was spent by the member entities to maintain their structures and ensure efficient operation of the flood control network. We, as everyone probably knows, have been having a lot of problems with homeless encampments in and around our flood control system. You can see the photo in the middle is actually a pretty recent photo that was taken of the Central Freeway Channel, and that's all debris and trash that's been thrown in the channel by a homeless encampment. One of the things we're looking at, and we're just starting to investigate this, is to work with the member entities, and I know the city of Las Vegas and Clark County in particular are looking at different programs to try to give the homeless the services they need to get out of the situation they're in. I think it might be a good idea for flood control to team up with those different departments and try to approach these people in our system to try to first get them out of the system and get them the services that they need. But then once they're out, to clean up the encampment areas, clean up the facility. And then what we're experimenting with a pilot project in North Las Vegas is to actually have security. We would actually pay for security to patrol the channel that we just cleaned up. Because one of the problems we're having is we go out and we get the people out, we clean the facility up, and then they just move right back in as soon as we're gone. And then we have to, it's just a vicious cycle that we have to do over and over. So in order to stop that, we're trying this pilot program security to see if we can keep the people from setting up camps again after we're done with that pilot program. Just started, but so far it's been very successful, and so it's something we continue to investigate. And I'll probably be coming back to the board with an item to discuss this and see if we can expand it to the entire program. In addition to the routine maintenance, we did have 3 major repair projects. 2 of them are in the city of Henderson. The Northeast C1 detention basin and the EC1 detention basin suffered some damage from storm events recently. And so there's some pretty major repair projects going on to repair that damage and put some facilities in to try to control that from happening again. Similarly, the range wash in Clark County had some damage from a recent storm event that has since been resolved. I'll pause there for a second, see if you have any questions.
Commissioners?
Yes, this is Mayor Goodman. Thank you, Steve. Very thorough, and I really learned a lot in reading this. Two questions that I was unable to answer. The monies that are unfunded but in reserve to complete projects at the $490 million, for example, this may be a non-answerable one. Are those monies invested in the duration till they're used?
Yeah, those monies are encumbered by the board when we approve when you approve a contract with the entities, and so that's money in the bank. The $490 million was money in the bank that is being spent down as we work through those contracts. It's not money that we need to collect.
Okay, but if it's a multi-year project, are those funds earning? Are they invested? And as you draw down on them.
They are. We keep our money with the Clark County Treasurer's Office, so they do invest that money, and we do make interest on it until we use it.
Okay. The second question I had was, how are you funding the issues with the homeless? Is that coming out of your general fund, or is that something you're sharing with NDOT? And are the cities, municipalities, county, are we participating in helping with that?
We, if it's a regional flood control facility, then we pay 100% of those encampment cleanups. And so, but what we don't pay for is the social service part. So if we have a social services coming out or other agencies that are interacting on a human level with the homeless people, that's paid for by the county or the city. But the actual physical work of the cleanup is paid for by the flood control. Now, the pilot program for security is actually being paid for by us. One of the things we're looking at is how much it actually costs to do the homeless encampment cleanups. And then we're saying, well, is there a way maybe we could better spend this money to be a little more proactive instead of reactive, and instead of going out and cleaning up after the fact, try to keep it from, the debris from occurring in the first place. And so that kind of our justification for this pilot program and actually spending maintenance money on security. But that does come out of our
Operating.
Well, it comes out of the maintenance fund, actually.
Maintenance. So I think it's wonderful that there's actually coordination then between the parties who are working on homeless issues and the flood control district, because of the, that's an asset of the local region, and just making sure that your agency is coordinating and working closely with local governments and the region as well to be a part of that solution. Understanding that you can't fund the programs, but you certainly can coordinate with the use of resources.
Yeah, that's exactly the goal, and we want to ramp that up as much as we can. Try to just form some partnerships with these different homeless advocates and other agencies that deal with it.
And Madam Chairman, if I might ask one more question
Sure.
in relation to the homeless issue. I would imagine in your pilot program, well, I shouldn't imagine, is that funded by dollars that you already have, or is that funded as a pilot program either through the state or the federal government?
Yeah, it's funded using regional flood control district dollars, and it is money that was included in our budget. Frankly, it isn't that expensive, at least so far, to do the security with this pilot program. We've only focused on about 3 different channels, so it's not really been that big of a cost yet. But if we expanded countywide, obviously those costs would go up. So before we do that, we'll report to the board how the pilot program went, how much it cost, how much we're spending on the encampment cleanups, and give you a comparison of that, and then I'll see if it's a reasonable thing that the board approve expanding this program to other facilities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I still have some slides left. I just want
Commissioner Galt, did you have a question? Can you turn your volume on? There you go. I think I hear you.
Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Steve, when will you start the master plan update in Mesquite, and how long would you anticipate that would take?
It's initiating right now. We are going to do that in-house as well, using in-house staff. We anticipate it'll probably take about 8 or 9 months, but we'll be working in conjunction with Travis Anderson and your other public works employees to make sure they provide the input that we need to get that done.
Thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead, Steve.
Okay. So the next key service area is floodplain management. One of the major things we're working on right now is an update to our hydrologic criteria drainage design manual, which is a mouthful to say. This is a manual that's basically the Bible that is used by every drainage engineer in Clark County to get their work done. So it's a very important document. It hasn't been updated for about 20 years. So we've initiated a major update to that manual. We hired a consultant to help us do that. But what's interesting about this project is that we had 5 different companies submitted an RFP, or request for proposal, to do the work. We selected 1. The other 4 that didn't get the job, we actually entered into a much smaller contract with them so that they could be subject matter experts during the actual update of the manual. So we actually hired all 5 of the proposers that submitted on the project. And then we've hired a 5th consultant as well as another subject matter expert. And so it's going very well. We're having stakeholder meetings, usually 2 a month, involving all the entity personnel as well as these consultants. So a lot of eyes are looking at this, and a lot of brain power is being put into it to make sure that we get a really good document at the end. We also routinely will submit revisions to FEMA to revise flood maps that result from improvements that are made as part of the capital improvement program. The Cooper Crossing in Moapa is the most recent one that was just completed in 2020. We're actually working with the city of Henderson right now to do map revisions for the flood zone downstream of the North Detention Basin, which is near the Raiders practice facility south of St. Louis Way, that will eliminate the flood zone that's actually downstream of that facility. We expect that to be done in the near future.
Thank you.
The next key service area is environmental protection. We're very busy on this side of the house with environmental protection. We're working with the state and the EPA to develop a new selenium standard for Las Vegas Wash. I won't give you too many details on that, but it's kind of a huge undertaking, and it's important to the Las Vegas, the entities in the Las Vegas Valley to get a good standard for selenium in Las Vegas Wash. We want something in there that we can meet so that we're found in violation of that standard once it's adopted. So that's an important consideration for us. Of course, we work with NDEP to make sure we're in compliance with the Clean Water Act in terms of the MS4 permit, the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System permit. So we work hand in hand with our co-permittees, which are the 4 agencies, Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, Henderson, and Clark County here in the Las Vegas Valley, to work through that permit and make sure that we stay in compliance with the federal government's requirements. Also, we're working on an in lieu fee mitigation bank project. Anytime we have a channel project or any type of flood control facility that's in a natural wash, we will have to mitigate for impacts to wetlands and the waters of the U.S. We normally do that by paying into a mitigation bank. When you see the photo you see on the right there is actually the mitigation that was done out at the wetlands park. And so that was funded using money that we paid in as part of our mitigation efforts for projects in Clark County. We're running out of credits, and so we need to establish a new mitigation bank with the Corps and the EPA, which is a major undertaking. We're about 2 years into this project, and we're maybe 50% done, so it's not easy to get.
Steve, what's involved with establishing that bank?
Well, you generally work with the Corps. There's a number of steps that you have to go through to identify a site and make sure that they're okay with it. There's an interagency review team that has been a problem in the past. It's very hard to get stuff past them, and in fact, we had some issues ourselves with the location of the bank that we had selected. So now we're in the process of shifting that to somewhere else and see if we can find another location that's acceptable to them. But it's just anytime you're really dealing with the federal government, it's really like this done. So we'll continue to work at it. We do have a consultant on board that's helping us, has done several of these banks in other areas. So they are experienced with it, and so hopefully we can work through our issues and get that.
And what federal agencies do you coordinate with?
It's mainly the Corps, but also the EPA.
Thank you. Thanks.
For the service areas, I just wanted to touch on a few other things. We're almost done. I wanted to take a quick look at our financials. This is kind of a busy slide, but just to say that we've been closely, as you know, monitoring our revenues on a month-to-month basis as we go through the pandemic. We did issue that new 94 million new money bond. We also issued a refunding bond that refunded two existing bonds, the 2013 and 2020 bonds, to take advantage of the great interest rate environment we were in. Those were both done in October of 2020, which we did purposefully to try to get it done before the presidential election, because we weren't really sure how interest rates were going to be affected by that. We also structured the refunding bond in such a way that we reduced our debt service for the first several years of the repayment period, so that would help us get through the downturn in the economy before the debt service starts getting down. We always keep our operating expenses at 10% or less of revenue. That's best reflected on this graph. The blue bars on the graph represent sales tax over the last 10 years or so. You see a pretty steady increase in sales tax up till 2019, and then we had the reduction in sales tax in 2020, and we're projecting a small rebound of the sales tax in 2021. We're actually experiencing that. I think we're within 1% of what we estimated for 2020. So we're in relatively good shape in terms of sales tax. The gray bars represent our operating expenses. You can see that we really try to keep our operating expenses as low as possible so that we can spend every dollar that we have available to design and construct flood control facilities. And then the black line that you see going through the bar graph is actually our full-time equivalent positions. So we had 26 and a half positions up through 2017, even though there was a constant increase in sales tax revenues. And then we increased one person in 2018. We hired a new hydrologist, and then we added a part-time position in 2019. So we got a total of 28 full-time equivalent positions at this right now. There's kind of a sales tax summary on the right-hand side of the slide. You see that our estimates for FY20 were about 112 million. That was pre-COVID. When the COVID hit, we reduced that estimate about 9% to 101.3 million. And then the actuals came in at about 106 million, which was only about a 5% reduction of what we originally estimated. And then the 21 estimate is at 104 million. And as I mentioned, we're through 4 months into this fiscal year, we're about 1% over what we've estimated. Things are, sales taxes dropped some, but it's not nearly as bad as what we had expected.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness, yes. In terms of public safety, we have a major public information campaign. I'd like to say that we build storm drains and channels and detention basins to keep floods away from people. So we do these stormwater ads to try to keep people away from floods. And so we have place TV commercials, we have billboards, radio ads, we do a lot of social media. Now we spend about $1 million a year on public outreach. We, of course, had to revamp our school presentations. One of the major components of our program is to physically have a staff member go to elementary school, second and third grade, generally aged group, and to talk to them about the dangers of flooding, how dirty the flood water is, how dangerous it is, don't play in channels, that type of thing. That's been very effective, but of course with the schools closed, we've had to revamp that. So we produced a new presentation that's actually digitally presented to the students through their computer. It was very engaging. I think it was not as effective as going in person. Kids like to go to the assembly, so they're happy to be there. But watching it on the computer has been reasonably effective, so we're pretty happy about that. We did complete in 2020 a major upgrade to our Regional Flood Control District website. You can see a snapshot of the homepage up right there, made it much more user-friendly. All the information that was in the old website is still available. It's just easier to navigate, and it's certainly better for mobile devices to be able to log on using a phone or an iPad. And one thing we're adding, and I'll probably be presenting in March to the board, is a construction dashboard where a member of the public can just click on this dashboard and see a map of all the projects we have either under construction, about to start construction, or in design. So really the goal of that is if someone was driving around and they went through a construction zone and saw our sign, if they went home and logged on, they can quickly find data on that project, what it is, who's doing it, and when it's going to be.
Wonderful.
We'll be looking forward to rolling that out soon. And of course, every year we do a flash flood safety press conference. This year we had to do that virtually, which was a bit of a challenge, but I think still effective. And we did get some pretty good time on all the news stations as a result of that press conference. But it's been difficult, frankly, when you have 240 days of snow. It's hard to get a flood safety message out to the people. But we continue moving forward with our campaign, and I think it's been. We're almost done. The public safety component also includes our flood threat recognition system. This is all of our monitoring stations that we have all throughout Clark County. We have well over 200 monitoring stations operating right now. And we did complete an upgrade to Alert 2, which is a major improvement to how we receive that data and how accurate the data is. First responders use this website all the time during rain events to know where it's raining and how much, so they know where they need to respond to different issues that might be resulting from flooding. One thing that actually will affect the Gulf area and Mesquite is the Virgin Peak repeater. We've been having a lot of problems with that repeater. It's not accessible by vehicles. The only way to get to it is by helicopter. So when we have a problem with it, we have to fly in a helicopter up to repair it. It's been very challenging to do that. So we're looking at options to take that repeater out of service and provide a similar amount of service through 2 other repeaters that we're going to put near Mesquite and near Moapa Valley. So that work is underway. That's important to us because all the gauges up in Moapa Valley and the Mesquite area use that Virgin repeater to keep their information back to us in the district. So we're having trouble getting that data with the problems that we're having. So we'll get that wrapped up. We do have IT staff that is capable of coding apps, and so they have created several apps for us for mobile phones. The most recent ones they've done has actually just been for district staff to help them with their maintenance of this flood threat recognition system. All of those efforts, maintaining these systems, we've been operational at least 97.5% of the last year.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Sure, Commissioner.
Steve, if you take that repeater down on Virgin Peak, how will you get flood information from that area?
So what we'll do is we're going to install 2 new repeaters. There's going to be one at Scenic Tank and one at Beacon Hill. The Scenic Tank is actually controlled by the city of Mesquite. They have communications set up there with a tower. So we've actually installed a repeater there. In order to get, we don't have line of sight from the Scenic Tank to Las Vegas, so we have to set up a second repeater that's going to be at Beacon Hill, which is controlled by Clark County. So we're in the process of putting that repeater in. So once that's in, we'll have 2 repeaters getting the signal from the gauges up in Mesquite back to us instead of that one up on Virgin Peak. But both of those will be accessible by vehicle. So if we have a battery die or solar panels not working or anything like that, we can quickly get out there and get that fixed up and get the system back up and running a lot faster.
And where does the second repeater go?
It's called Beacon Hill. It's somewhere near Wappa Valley, I think up on the Morgan Mesa Ridge or someplace like that. I don't know exactly where it is, but it does have line of sight from the seeding tank. The gauges in Mesquite will go to seeding tank, then they'll shoot that to Beacon Hill, and then that will make it back to our offices here at the district.
Thanks.
Sure.
Is there solar on these sites as well? So there's battery backup and solar as well, or?
Yeah, actually they're all battery. Most of them, we don't have power running to them, so they're run by battery, and then we have solar panels that keep the batteries charged up. But we have 3 hydrologists on staff that rotate every year. They visit each site at least twice to replace the batteries and make sure the solar panels are working.
Thank you.
There's no damage to them. They work pretty well. They last the 6 months without any trouble. The biggest problem we have, again, is homeless people or people vandalizing the gauge stations. Solar panels are attractive targets apparently for people that like to shoot guns out in the areas outside of the city. So we're going out and replacing those quite a bit.
Is there anything else on your presentation?
One more slide, and that is just to look at goals for 2021. Of course, we'll continue to work through the pandemic, and it's a very fluid situation, as we all know, and we'll adapt as necessary depending on whatever gets thrown at us. We are entering into a legislative session, so we will monitor that. We always get concerned when we're in a downturn in the economy and we're going into a legislative session, because legislators start looking at where tax money is going and being spent. So we'll be prepared, if necessary, to tell our story up at the legislative session of why how we spend our money and how efficient we are and how important it is.
Steve, who's our lobbyist?
We don't have a lobbyist. We did have Brian Gresh years ago, but we found that we didn't really need a lobbyist locally. We do utilize the county's lobbyist if necessary, and we can hire someone if we need to.
So just for clarification for members, you submit your budget through the county, where we at Transportation actually approve the budget. We approve it, but then the final hearing is actually at the county commission level, correct?
Yeah, in terms of our budget, our board will approve it prior to us sending it to the county, and then the county includes it in their budget that goes to the state. So it has to be heard by our board before it goes to the BCC to be included in the budget to be heard by the BCC.
Thank you.
We'll continue to work on the projects to encumber the bond funding I mentioned. The $94 million in new money the engineering team will be focusing on that to get all things wrapped up and ready to go, so we can get that funding encumbered to get those projects out to construction.
Steve, Carolyn, just if I may, Madam Chair, just to ask one question. As we're moving into this new administration and cabinet members are being selected and ratified, preemptively for the strike to get in there with all this infrastructure funding that we're hopeful of getting, how often and how in depth are you working with our federal representatives to really push this forward and be there before all the funds are already dispersed or you're in line? Are we there with anything in our flood?
So we work quite often with the delegation. Frankly, when it comes to infrastructure funding, the focus of the federal government almost always is on transportation type projects. It's rare that we get funding for flood control, and the reason for that is the Corps of Engineers is responsible for flood control, and so they have a big backlog of projects that need funding. And so when there's an infrastructure program, most of the money goes towards the Corps of Engineers, and the Corps uses it to fund their projects. We currently don't have a Corps project that we're working on. We criteria for getting a core project approved is you have to meet a benefit to cost ratio that is satisfactory to the core, and then they use that to compete against every other entity in the country. Very difficult to get a benefit to cost ratio to a point where it's competitive. And so we have just been relying on local funding for our projects as opposed to going through or trying to do a federal project. That said, the FEMA has actually started a new program. It's called BRIC, the Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities, which is a grant program. And so they are asking for submittals from the local agencies to that program. There's $500 million available for projects across the country from that program. So we did work with our partners up at the state of Nevada to get a project submitted for portion of that BRIC funding, and we're going to continue to do that as we go into the next year to ask for even more money. The project that we did submit is actually in the city of Mesquite. It's the Virgin River project that we're building a levee to protect the city of Mesquite from the flows in the Virgin River. So we'll be asking for that.
So Steve, we did have a couple of core projects in the past. I think was it the Flamingo Wash core project, and then the Raiders construction site was a core project. But as you said, it's a lot more complicated and difficult too.
It is. At the time, we did a $300 million actually project through the Corps that built 28 miles of channels and storm drains and about 7 detention basins in the southwest part of the valley. That was a very successful project, admittedly, but the rules that were in place to get the benefit to cost ratio were a little different then than they are now. And actually, I think if we came in with that project now, we'd have a hard time under the current rules meeting the BCR that we got originally. And so it would be difficult to get that. And once the project is authorized by the Corps, it's signed, the general signs a chief's report, and then you have to go back every year and get appropriations to fund it. And so it was an every year battle to try to make sure we got the appropriations we needed to get that project. It took about 15 years or so to get that project from start to finish. The Raider Stadium was actually not a Corps project, but we had to get a permit from the Corps because it affected one of those facilities that was built with that original project.
Okay, thank you.
The other 5, 6, and 7 are the 3 environmental issues that we've been working on, so we'll continue to work on those. Item 8 is the homeless issue, so we continue to put together data and come up with some sort of plan and work with other agencies to try to help minimize the homeless issues. Item 9 is that is a legislation we're working on through the federal government. We've been working with Senator Masto's office as well as Congresswoman Dee Titus's office. Get the legislation approved that away grants from BLM to come as not an easement, but as actually fee title. We're doing that to try to relieve ourselves of some of the stipulations that are placed on those grants from the BLM on our projects. The biggest one of those stipulations, when we do it like a detention basin project that has a lot of export of material, we have to pay royalties to the BLM to export that material off the site, which is a major cost for us. It's just paying the federal government for the minerals that are on the site that we're excavating. So I feel like we shouldn't have to do that. So that's,
And they generally wash in and out later.
Right. Even sediment that washes into a basin that's already completed, if we're going to release that through the maintenance program, we have to pay royalties on that if it's on the BLM land, which to me is kind of ridiculous.
I agree. Let us know if you need help with that.
I will. We actually tied that legislation to the lands bill that the county is working on. So that's moving forward. A decision draft was issued, or a discussion draft, I should say, was issued by Senator Masto's office in an effort to try to placate some of the concerns of environmental groups on that legislation, which was really related to the lands bill, really our portion of the legislation. So it is moving forward. We're hoping that it gets dropped onto the Senate floor sometime early this year.
It'd be great.
And I believe that's it. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any, or if anything I didn't cover.
Any questions, commissioners? If not, Steve, are you asking for any change in compensation or benefits?
I'm not. Actually, my contract has an item in it that requires a 2% COLA, and I'm not comfortable taking that because none of my employees are getting a COLA. I don't think it's fair that I get one and they don't. So I had Chris Figgins, our attorney, write up a waiver to just eliminate that requirement this year for the COLA. So I'm asking for no raise. I don't want a merit or a COLA, just to be fair with the other.
Chris, anything you care to comment on that?
Yeah, so like Steve said, under the contract he has with us, there's a clause in there that gives him an automatic, I think it's 2% raise per year at a minimum, and Steve doesn't want to do that, so I wrote, there's a waiver that I think we should probably just take it to the board. The board doesn't have to sign it, it's coming from Steve. We can either tell the board or just take it and show what he's doing, but I kind of like a paper trail so that we have that on record that he has waived that right he actually has to get the 2% raise.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions, comments?
No, I have a comment. I admire Steve for taking that position. I think that's to be commended. And my vote would be simply to take it to the board and go on and improve it here.
Okay.
From my position, first of all, I just commend Steve for the excellence of service all these years. The results that he's been able to pull together for the entire Southern Nevada area, everything that he's done, and of course concur with Commissioner Member Gall in this appreciation, and I think it's a very prudent and wise and fair step that he has taken. So I agree and bring it to the full board.
Wonderful. Well, again, I want to concur with my fellow commissioners, and thank you so much for your leadership and dedication to the Regional Flood Control District. I think we're a pretty premier organization across the country. Your district is recognized by many others, and certainly we all recognize the challenging times that we're experiencing in Southern Nevada, and appreciate the position that you're taking, and I concur too that we should take this to the board. Can I have a motion to that effect? Basically that we accept the report and that we're going to take the decision with regards to compensation to the board.
So moved.
We have a motion on the floor. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Say nay. And that motion carries. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you for all those comments. I really appreciate that, and look forward to continuing working with you over the next year.
Thank you. And I think we have one more public comment period.
We do.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the comments could be submitted via email, public comment at regionalflood.org, and I'll ask Tammy if we had received any public comments.
Commissioners, Tammy McMahon for the record. There are no public comments.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for your leadership.
Thanks so much.
Thanks. So I think our next meeting convenes in about 10 minutes.